All right, here we go. My name's Gilbert Bale. I'm gonna be interviewing my friend right here that I knew from prison for a long time. We were both former life-term inmates, and I'm gonna hand it over right now so my friend could introduce himself. He's gonna tell us his name and how old he is and how long he was in prison.
Hello, folks. My name is Melvin Richardson. I'll be 59 in September. I did a total term of 40 years, 6 months, and 2 days for the first-degree murder of my homeboy.
And so you went to prison for murder. Uh, were you involved with gangs, drugs, or anything of that sort?
Yes, I ran the streets with gang members. I started my own neighborhood, and an internal dispute uh, ensued, and as a result, I made the awful decision to terminate my homeboy's life. And as a result, found myself 18 years old facing the death penalty. I received a sentence of life without the possibility of parole. Approximately 8 years afterwards, I got it reduced to 25 years of life. And so I came to prison and continued associating with prison gangs and what have you. And that led to almost a 20-year stint in the solitary confinement, or what they call the security housing units.
So you were basically in a security housing unit, what they call the SHU here in California, for about 20 years then.
Yes, correct.
What were some of the early prisons you were at, during your incarceration?
Started in the Chino, what they call the reception center. From there, I went on to the Gladiator School known as Tracy, or the Dual Vocational Institution. From there, I went to San Quentin. Then we opened up Tehachapi security housing units, the infamous Corcoran, Gladiator housing units, on to Pelican Bay.
Okay. So that's basically all the main stops of all the level 4 high security prisons here in California.
That's correct.
All right. And so we'll get into that in another interview about some of your experiences, because I'm sure the audience, people listening, are going to want to know, how the difficulties that you were faced with. And there's no doubt in my mind that we could probably go on for hours and hours and talk about, the challenges and the emotions that come, the hopelessness, the helplessness. But I want you to talk a little bit today about what was it while you were in prison that how did you start changing your life? Because obviously you changed your life to be out here now, to get out of prison.
The motivation for me to ultimately begin my change happened when I went back to court in '95, and my girlfriend at the time purchased a lawyer for me, and we had real good grounds. But the judge refused to grant the petition on the grounds that I was a gang leader. And so I went back to prison and went to my first parole board hearing, and the commissioner was impressed with me, to say the least, and made it clear that if I was to ever have an opportunity to get found suitable for parole, that I would have to disassociate myself from the prison gang. And as far as I was concerned, that was out of the question. But having talked to my family about it, my mother really made it clear that, after almost 20 years behind the glass without a contact visit, and being so far away from home, I mean, Pelican Bay is about 900 miles from Southern California, that I began to see the strain that my values and my political beliefs was having on my family. And I never considered that before. And so I had a choice to make, family versus the homies, And so You would think that would have been an easy choice to make, because we all at some point say, you know, we love family more than anything. But when, you know, when the rubber hits the road and you have to make that critical decision, it was quite difficult. And so, but I nonetheless chose family over everything else, and decided to disassociate myself from the prison gang. So that's where it all started.
Yeah, I could remember. Meeting you in prison when we were both on the other side of that wall, and you know, I remember I was impressed with your commitment and your dedication when we were working with at-risk youth, when they were bringing the youth into the prison in a Soledad, and you know, that kind of gravitated me towards you to open up and start having a probably, you know, a better relationship, because of the diversity and because of the separation that's in prison. That's always, you know, going against the grain sometimes. Even, you know, even when you're changing, it's a difficult challenge. But I just wanted to add that in there, man, you know, because you continue to impress me. Even I know how difficult it is to go to a parole board hearing and be found suitable, and, you know, still the governor has to sign off and let you come home. So congratulations on coming home. How long have you been out now?
I've been out a little over 3 weeks now.
3 weeks, man.
Yeah.
So what has been the biggest challenge since you've been home?
The biggest challenge is getting around. I mean, my health is my physical health. I have disabilities now because of all of the strenuous exercises and whatnot we used to do back in the day, the burpees and all that. And so I have arthritis in my knees, my hips, and my back, and it makes mobility issues very, very hard. And so that has been the biggest challenge. I just learning to use this computer, as you know, was quite challenging. This is the first computer, the first cell phone I ever had, and it's quite the challenge, trust me.
That's right. So
Yeah.
so you've been out about 3 weeks, and tell me a little bit about what you do. What you know, I know about your certification, maybe, but I'd like for you to, you know, talk about that briefly.
Yeah. When I decided to make that change, I began taking every self-help program I could. I've taken over 100 self-help classes in the last 23 plus years. I took every vocational class I could take. I taken college classes. So when I walked out of there, I walked out a better man than I was when I went in. And so I'm proud of the fact that I have over 5 vocational trades. I have a profession. I left out of there as a certified drug and alcohol counselor. I walked out with 4 associate degrees. And so I'm proud of that fact. And so now I'm drawing on that prison experience and using that as a means to transition my life experiences into a counseling venue where I could, you know, help youngsters who wasn't privy to the type of influence that they should have had when I was their age. And so I'm going to make sure that I make myself available to the young people who may be confused, who may have anger issues or abandonment issues, so that they don't have to make the choices that I made.
Man, that's really impressive. You know, because there's a stigma that comes with society and how they view persons in prison. You know, and I don't like to use the word inmate or convict because it doesn't validate you as a person. But people in prison, you know, we made mistake, we made bad decisions, we hurt people, we victimize people. But there's a stigma like we don't care about society, we don't care about the youth, we don't care about our victims. And obviously you have been able to display, you've been able to counter that by what, not just what you bring out here coming out of prison as a drug and alcohol counselor, as a certified drug and alcohol, but also all the work you did in there to help the many, many men you came into contact with, both going to those groups, teaching those groups, working in the substance abuse program. And here you are now, you know, ready to show up and give back. where most
Absolutely.
people would probably just walk away and say, man, I want to forget about my experience and never go back, you know, never give. But here you are, you're giving back, man. So that's, you know, that's something that's, you know, it's rare. It's rare, man. And I wanted to give you that recognition. The other thing I wanted to say is before, you know, before we end this first interview we're doing, is what would be your message to these next generations that don't know what goes on in the justice system, that don't know how trial really goes down, you know, how they don't understand how um, the prison system is designed. They don't understand the economics, the social part of it, the historical part of it. What would be your message to this new population that doesn't understand what you have been able to experience?
First thing I would like to convey is the fact that, and first, thank you for the kind comments, but I want it to be perfectly understood that my transition into the new man, as you see now, was not an easy transition. It was not an easy process. I took the standpoint when I walked away from the gangs that I'm just doing me. I don't care about nobody. Nobody cared about me, so I didn't take the position that I owed anything to anybody. In fact, I felt society and everybody else owed me, but I was going to just walk away and just have a clean slate. But when I was challenged by my peers, such as yourself, who was always on the front line on giving back, when I was challenged to, I began to look at the things that I have to, be accounted for. And then I made the conscious decision that I can only be redeemed from all my past, indiscretions through the process of giving back. So I want that to be perfectly understood. And my message to the young people who haven't had the experience with the criminal justice system is this, is that, you have to think before you act, right? A lot of us, when we were young, we have so many traumatic experiences in our life with abuse, be it sexual abuse. Mine was sexual abuse. Mine was physical abuse and psychological abuse as a child. And I didn't understand the process and the truth regarding the criminal justice system. The only thing I understood was that I loved my homies and I was willing to give my life or even kill representing my hood. And having done that, then the reality began to set in that the homies ain't there for you. In fact, the first ones to take the stand against you was the homies. And then you begin to see that it's not about the presumption of innocence. Every defendant who goes there is presumed guilty, and you have to prove your innocence, and you don't have the resources to do that. It can be quite frightening. It can be quite an overwhelming experience, not just for me, but for my family too. When I look back and see the what I put the family through, that's, it's real hard to forgive yourself for that, because, I can honestly say I didn't know any better. But my message to you is to make you aware that once you decide to give yourself permission to commit that act, you can't control the outcome, And so, I went to a Scare Straight program when I was 16 years old, and I didn't leave out of there with anything that was going to prepare me on how to survive in the streets. And so I want to give these young people, you see, what I didn't get, and that is, your actions is going to affect not only you, but everybody you love, everybody that loves you, right? And you won't be able to control the outcome. So think before you act.
Thank you, Melvin. I appreciate you coming on here and doing this interview. For those listeners that are listening to Melvin, if you like to hear more, subscribe on the Keys to Life, and we can bring Melvin back and he can tell you a lot more about some of those experiences, because there's way more to than what he just introduced himself as. And, you know, like it on the bottom. And we look forward to you viewing the next interview. So thank you, Melvin, and thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank you.